1. I'm not normally a devious man, but even I have my limits. So this all started in high school in the early 90s. My best friend Jane was in an on-again, off-again relationship with a guy we'll call Bill. Jen and I went back basically to birth. She was the bratty twin sister I never had. We lived next door to each other from the time I was 3. We were friends and never anything more. This was a strictly platonic friendship. So we grow up, her family moves, and go to different high schools in different parts of town. We kept in touch and caught up on everything in our lives. But during sophomore year, Jane met Bill in the theater program at her high school. From then on, there was no catching up, just listening to the relationship status of these two. Bill was fine, I guess. But he would go out with Jane for a while, then get bored of her or tired of her energy or whatever, and dump her. Jane would call me, and I'd play the role of the emotional tampon. A month later, when Bill got lonely, they'd get back together, and I'd hear about that too. For 2.5 years it went on that way. At least 10 break up and get back together stories. Finally, her senior year, Bill breaks up with Jane 2 days before the spring formal. Jane calls me in tears and begs me to take her. I hated going to high school functions. I'm a high school teacher now, and I hate going to them. But fine, I'm a friend, I'll take her. Because that's what friends do, right? So I spent 2 days and all my savings to get myself together for formal. Because of the late notice, everything in the city had already been rented. So my tux was out of date and the size too small. I'm 6'6". The shoes look like something a pimp would wear, in the worst possible way, and the flowers are basically the leftover stems from everyone else. All the while I'm getting scolded and tisked by everyone in flower and rental places, because I should have planned for this weeks ago. But all this was fine. I'd be embarrassed for a friend. The night rolls around and I pick Jane up. We arrive at her school and I know nobody. The entire night of the formal, she tried to parade me in front of Bill to make him jealous or show him that she was over him or something. All night, that was all she talked about. When she would run into one of her friends, it was all they could talk about. I felt like shit because clearly this wasn't about salvaging a good time, and more about using me as a prop, a tool. And that's what I felt like. A tool. But on the plus side, I was pretty sure I'd never have to hear about Bill again. So 2 weeks later, Jane calls me up. She and Bill are back together. Oh no, hell no. Fuck no, not this time. Nope times infinity. So I hatched a plan. Jane and Bill followed a certain pattern. And all I had to do was wait for what I called the pre-breakup call. This would be when Jane would call me to tell me how immature Bill was being and assuring me that it would work out because they truly were in love. I got that call about 3 weeks after they got back together and immediately went into action. That night I went to a grocery store and brought all the frozen squid I could find, about 11 pounds. I was busting my ass on the weekends doing construction work and had to replenish my funds from the formal night disaster. I blew it all. Then I drove to her house at 2 in the morning and spent 15 minutes in shadow behind her fence, hucking them into the backyard pool. The deck was littered with them and the pool was unusable. I rained my calamari of vengeance all over her space. The next day, I got a call from Jane. At first, I was afraid someone had seen me, but nope. Much like I had hoped, she was calling to complain about how Bill had thrown squid into her backyard. Oh sure, when she confronted him about it, he had denied it. But she assured me she could always tell when he was lying, just like she could with me. I had to put my hand over the receiver so she couldn't hear my smile. Yes, it was big enough to hear. But that time it stuck. I have never had to deal with a Bill story again. Jane and I are both 46 now, and she still doesn't know the truth. It's not that we couldn't have a laugh about it or anything, it's just that I don't want her reconciling with Bill again. 2. So this was my first job after university. I got my bachelor's degree in chemistry and was lucky to find a position in my field right off the start. The pay was substandard, but it was required to put something on my resume. Since I was a new graduate, they thought that I was not going to be any real help to them. They said I will just be doing some analytical work, and if I had time for it, There was some research and development on a new compound they were working on. It was a very strong biocide, but the papers done on it only yielded around 25% efficiency, which made it not feasible to use on large scale. I was the only chemist who worked in the lab, and the company was very top-heavy, lots of managers. Once I had the analytical and synthesis work they wanted me to do worked out, I wanted to work on the R&D project to be able to put something significant on my resume. I read all the public research papers on the compound and worked pretty hard testing out different methods to increase the yields. I had tried everything from combining the different known methods of making the compound to adjusting the quantity of chemicals with no significant improvement. After about 6 months, I had a poof moment, and instead changed the rate of addition of one of the compounds, and after some work, got the yields up to above 95%, using a method which could be done in large scale. The company was ecstatic, made a press release about the new product, and started looking at FDA approvals, etc. We also needed to patent the new method. The company decided to hire a PhD chemist who would give the patent and FDA approvals more merit. As I only had a BSc, which is honestly seen as very incredible in the science world, I didn't mind. After a while, this person became my manager. I had really liked the manager I had before, and was hoping that this person would be good to work with too. With her experience in X-ray diffraction, I was also hoping to get to know more about that as well. The thing is, I had worked on this compound for so long that I had read a ton of literature around it. In addition to that, I had a ton of experiments from start to finish, from procedure to write-up, and had a solid grasp of what I was doing. The first meeting about the direction we wanted to move forward, and had the CEO and all the managers in on it. The CEO had asked the PhD chemist a question on what would be a good direction to move forward. She responded with an opinion which lacked information from a few papers I had read. In a very polite way, I said, "In this paper and that paper, they discussed this and said that it would not be possible to do." Then suggested what I would do to go forward. The CEO liked my plan. I was not trying to whip my dick out, but did not want to waste months doing research which would not get us going forward. After writing what I was going to say, it was a big mistake, but I'm now thinking it's more appropriate to say, it was a significant learning experience for testing the water to see if someone can't handle being wrong. After this, I got to see a whole new side of her. Any tiny thing she thought I did wrong would go into this notebook. It came time for my performance review. Most people who worked in the lab had roughly half a page of items which needed to be discussed. I had 8 full pages. It was a joke. I recall this one adventure where we'd ran out of DI water, so we had to get water from the university. When I got into her car, the tape cassette started playing. "You must listen to your husband, as listening to them will make you feel like you care." She was embarrassed, but I felt so incredibly bad for the person who she married after seeing how she handles relationships. Anyway, onto the defiance. With my knowledge about the compound, she still wanted me to write the procedures and carry them out. I would briefly discuss what we wanted to achieve, and most of the time she agreed. The thing about science is that you don't know if things will work. I guess if we did, we wouldn't have to do experiments. So this experiment had completely unexpected results, and about halfway through it, I had to change the procedure to try to get the best information we can out of the time we put into it. The next day, I show the report to the PhD, and she gets pissed. She says, "You did not follow the procedure which I approved. You're being insubordinate, and I'm going to report you." Her next steps were to the CEO, to which I am asked to go have a chat about 30 minutes later. He says that I have to follow her directions no matter what. I'm like, alright, this won't happen again, and just bided my time for the exact same thing to happen. A few weeks later, we purchased a bunch of equipment to make very large-scale synthesis of this chemical. The ingredients were about 2,000 alone. I wrote the synthesis according to our previous experiments, and she signed off on it. The synthesis would take 12 hours, so I was there for a pretty long day. Needless to say, something didn't go as planned about halfway through, something which would have been easily correctable. I was like, nope, I'm going to follow the procedure no matter what. And absolutely nothing made sense for what I was doing. I was just throwing chemicals randomly at this point with no rhyme or reason. Surely enough, the next day rolls around and she asks how it went. I responded, well, I am happy to say that I followed the procedure to a T. She says, great, where's the product? To which I point at this black blob of a mess. The product is red crystalline. She goes ballistic, her face goes red, and yells, why didn't you just correct the procedure? You remember the chat I had with the CEO? I am just going to follow the procedure from now on. She blew up. It was wonderful. I just sat there with the smuggest look on my face. So at this point, I was looking for another job as there was no room to move up and the pay was garbage. I found a great job, which paid 3 times what I was making there, and was happy to quit. There was always something odd about the reaction in that color, and the crystals were not always consistent. In the analytical work, it was always coming out to almost 100% purity, but we didn't narrow down why. She attributed this to my being bad at my job. 2 years later, I showed up at my old job to say hi to my old colleagues and my old manager. I pulled up in my new, used Corvette, and she passed me going back from lunch, and I couldn't help but notice that she had a PowerPoint on her screen labeled, Experiments to figure out why the coloring crystal size keeps varying in synthesis. I looked at it and said, see? It wasn't me. 3. This happened more than 10 years ago. So while it isn't as detailed as it could have been, it's very much burned into my memory. 2 to 3 months into my first job out of education, I am working as a croupier, enjoying it, that didn't last, fitting in nicely, etc. One day I'm dealing a game, give a payout and carry on. My supervisor questions me whether I paid out correctly. I say I think I did and went over my calculations, which were correct. I am at the stage where people can see that I am picking everything up quickly, so I have been afforded just enough respect where the supervisor isn't sure himself. He got it checked on the cameras with the pit boss, and even though my calculations were correct, the chips I got out were not. Paid out slightly too much. Not a big deal to be honest, but I did get taken aside by the pit boss a while after and basically told that if the supervisor says I'm wrong in these situations, to just go along with it. The chain of command in casinos is very rigid to the point where to question something a supervisor says or does can be treated with contempt in most circumstances. It was a very informal chat, and I get along with the supervisor and pit boss, but the message is clear. Do as the supervisor says under any circumstances. This is no problem for me, it was my error, and yeah, these guys are going to be right over me at this stage in my career, far more than the other way around. The very next night, I am dealing a far bigger game, with the only big punter of note in the building. Realistically, I shouldn't have been on this game with my experience level, but what the hell, I am being trusted enough to do it, so let's have a good time. First big payout comes. I'm slightly hesitant, but get my chips out and ask the supervisor to check the payout. Different guy from the night previous, but someone else I really get along with. He has a brief look and exclaims, "Short 10 pinks, mate." A pink in the casino is a £100 chip, so I'm a grand short. I have a look. There is no way I'm that far out. At this point, I'm not 100% sure I'm right, but I am 100% sure he is wrong. My personality is definitely the one where I would try to go through this with him to see if we can reach an agreement. However, the words of the previous night are ringing in my ears. Do not go against a supervisor. Just do what they say. Okay, no problem. I get a grand more, get the check, supervisor is happy, and the money gets paid out. This happens roughly 5 or 6 more times, ranging from £500 more to a whopping £2,500 more one spin. Each time I do as I'm told. I get replaced a while later, with the punter delighted to be leaving with a healthy profit, and I go on break. While on my break, a guy who I considered my mentor at the time, RIP, is also there, and I go through the spins with him. His immediate reaction is, "Shit, son. Every one of these have been overpaid." I talk to the pit boss when I go back down. Head back down, the casino was basically completely empty, so before I go stand at a game with no punters, I ask the pit boss for a word. I explain what I believe has happened and ask just for a quick check on the cameras as, yeah, I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. The reaction of the pit boss was essentially, "Don't worry about it, mate. I was watching the whole game. Everything looked above board to me. Even though you lost money, good job on keeping the game moving." I plead one last time to just have a look. Nothing is going on right now. He sends me away to a table directly facing him at the desk, and he does have a look. The next 10 minutes I can only describe as the soul of a man slowly draining out of his body. With each game spin, he watches the corners of his lips drop little by little, the color of his face lightening second by second, and his posture hunching each view. Of course, I am standing there, just watching him as he gets the manager over, followed by the deputy manager, who was also there, definitely keeping an eye on the game. Towards the end of the shift, the pit boss informs me that yes, I was right, and I have paid out roughly £7,500 more than I should have. This was a significant amount of money for the casino at the time. Fairly quiet, but a big chain of casinos, so nothing catastrophic. Internally, I am freaking out, but calm as a cucumber on the outside. I say to him exactly what he said to me the night before. I was just paying out what the supervisor told me to. For the record, the chances of the supervisor working with the punter was slim to none. He was just distracted by the totty on the other side of the table, trying to chat them up. Investigation comes up with a neutral manager who wasn't present at the time, and although most of the details have left my memory, the key part of the investigation boiled down to, on the games in question, you got the payout right every single time, internally dancing at hearing this bit, but every time your supervisor tells you to add more and you do the payout. Were you aware that this may be right and he may be wrong in these instances? I was aware I may be right, but I was by no means 100%, and I trusted someone with 20+ years experience to be right over me. If you thought you may have been right, why not question it at the time? Well, the night before I was explicitly told to do as my supervisor says under all circumstances. Not even think about arguing the toss. And nothing bad can happen. Not to mention that this would not have been brought to anyone's attention if I hadn't said anything, considering the supervisor, pit boss, manager, or even the deputy manager didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Definitely a good half-minute of silence following this. I am in this weird mental state where I'm scared as fuck they're just going to sack me, but also thinking, wow, I'm actually the only competent person in this whole situation. What follows was a verbal warning for myself. Definitely shouldn't have even got that, and should have appealed, but was happy to just take it and prove myself from there on, with everyone else involved getting written warnings and more. However, I was essentially rewarded with being able to learn a new game, which helped push my wage up a decent amount, and got a fair bit of respect with the boys for basically showing everyone else up. Oh, and I never saw that punter again. 4. Many years ago, I worked for a very nice restaurant. We weren't high class or anything, but we were very nice, especially for the area. We had a few regulars that would come in for business meetings or special dates, etc. And for the most part, everyone was courteous. We did have an extensive wine collection, and the owner was a fan of wine and loved to share that with people. So it would occasionally bring in some serious snobs. I love wine, but something about those that are truly passionate make them either incredible human beings or absolutely insufferable. Mike, a business regular, was one of the insufferable ones. He liked to bring prospective clients in to impress them with the wine and his snootiness. He was also one of the few people who would spend a lot of money in one sitting, tax write-off purposes I'm sure, make a grand show of tipping 35% or higher, and then slipping it back into his pocket after the client left. Not all of it, but regularly only left about 2% or less. One evening, he calls and makes a reservation for 12. This is very unusual, as usually it was only him and one or two other people. Mike pulled out all the stops and actually ordered and paid ahead of time, as he wanted minimal interruptions. He picked 4 menu items of similar value that his guests could pick from, pre-ordered appetizers, desserts, and 9 bottles of wine. The total before tax was close to $2,000. We were supposed to keep interactions to a minimum, but he wanted us to fill waters and sodas the moment they're half full, clear plates the moment someone is finished, bring fresh wine glasses every time someone has finished a glass, and don't let him ever catch someone refilling their own glass or using the same one. We were to be seen, not heard, and were to somehow, supposedly, to magically anticipate what everyone needed. He left a $25 tip when he prepaid. This was before the mandatory tips for groups of a certain size or larger. So the day arrives, and I came over first, introduced myself, explained that their host had prepaid for a set menu. The wine and appetizers would be out shortly, and I was there to take orders for any other drinks that may be wanted, what dressing they would like for their salad, and which of the 4 menu items each person would like. I went around the table, getting everyone's selections. I came to the head of the table, and asked Mike what his preference for salad dressing would be. He was extremely snippy with me when he said, "Blue cheese, and make sure the salad is well dressed," in his usual flashy show of authority to impress the people around him, with a very perturbed look on his face, since I dared to even speak at the table. At this point, I had it with Mike. I had already been hired at a new job and had already put in my 2 weeks' notice, hence why I was selected for Mike duty. I get to the back and I'm just so over it all. I'm prepping the salads and it happens. I get to Mike's salad. "Well dressed, you say? You got it, buddy." I took the mini-suit off the bottle of wine that the boss's wife had sewn as a gag, put it around the pint glass from the bar, and placed Mike's salad inside the glass, and brought that out to him, in front of what was sure to be a life-changing business deal. I made sure to slip in silently, drop off salads in front of people deftly, then made a point to set his down in front of him last. When there was a natural pause in the sales pitch, and clearly state, "Your well-dressed salad, sir." Laughs were had by all but Mike. The rest of the night went off without a word spoken between the guests and I. When they left, several of the guests had left a few dollars here and there tucked under their plates. I finished off my last week there without incident. 5. So this happened a few years ago, when people were allowed to roam the vast amount city streets without a mask. I am one of the 3 co-owners of a local tech company which also provided tech support. Now, one of our big-time clients was an office for whom we had deployed 3 to 4 servers and provided special tech support, as they were one of our OG clients. Now, the storage servers that we deployed in the firm were old, that is, started to wear down and started to get slow. So we suggested them to replace them with the newer, more reliable and faster ones, and the owner, a very douchebag of a dude, decided to wait till the weekend as they had a very huge and critical project going on, and he didn't want any time wasted, as they were near the deadline, a week or so left, and told us to get the new servers ready to go. Basically, put together the new servers and install the softwares, etc., etc., so that we could just go ahead and swap the servers and use the remaining time to check for errors, transport the necessary files for ongoing projects from the old servers to the new ones, and all such stuff. Now, the office had an employee who would look after and approve any and all repairs related with the servers. We too had to get his approval for any repairs related with the servers, unless we had the direct consent from the owner. So around 4 to 5 days before the new servers had deployed, we went and did our routine checkup on the servers. We do routine checkups on old servers if the owner and buyer asks us to do so, and found a major issue with them that could lead them to crash hard, like not being able to work again hard. So, like anyone would do, we wanted to resolve the issue. Luckily, it was nothing we hadn't seen. In fact, we predicted that it may occur, and we'd only take an hour's worth of downtime. So we sent an email to Elliot that contained all the details of the issue and asking approval to resolve and repair. Elliot flat out within seconds responded with a big no. We sent an email again asking if he was sure, and gave more details about the issue and how all the servers may crash if the issue wasn't resolved. He again responded with a no. So I called the owner, and he said to do as Elliot said. When I told him that Elliot said no, so he said, "Then don't do it." I asked that he put that in writing. He said okay, Around 10 minutes later, we got an email stating the conversation I had with him, so we left it at that. The next day, we get a frantic call from the office saying that the servers had crashed. How they were behind schedule, and how they could not do any work, and how it was our job to make sure there were no issues in the servers, and how we were to pay for their losses. I then calmly tell them that we in fact had told them about the issue and how serious it was, and that the servers may not work anymore, and that they had to wait till the weekend for the new servers to be deployed, as they were not completed yet. The owner got insane and said that we hadn't told them about the issue, but when I sent him the email chain between us and Elliot and his own email, he shut up and knew he couldn't do anything. He asked us to hurry the new servers and hung up. The next weekend, we deployed the new servers. The best part is that what would have cost him only an hour of downtime and repairs cost him 4 days of downtime, and possibly a lot of money as they were late to finish the project. And yeah, Elliot was probably canned because I never saw or heard from him again, as I came to a new, more awesome employee the next time we went for repairs again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 105. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, and comment also if you'd be so kind. It is very helpful to both me and the channel. Alright, let's see. It is the 1st of November today, isn't it? It is indeed the 1st of November. I don't think I have any birthday shoutouts today, so it's going to be a quick outro. I've got groceries coming in a few hours, so I'll have to get the video wrapped up and uploaded before they arrive, just so I can then get them sorted and away. I was very lucky to get them. I tried to do it at the weekend, but I don't know. There's a thing on the website saying something to do with the climate change conference. I don't know how that affects. Maybe it affects traffic, but I don't know how it affects actual delivery slots. Anyway, that's what they say. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.